welcome.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
for agreeing to do this. Not many people are comfortable hopping on a microphone.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for. I mean, I like talking through stuff and all that. So
Yeah.
thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're so welcome. Let's start with communism.
Okay.
Just straight out of the gate. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe what was the first point that socialism or communism, something about like that ideology was first appealing to you, or is it appealing to you at all? I guess I should not presume anything.
Yeah, I think it's most appealing in the sense that like there's a lot of like I guess like propaganda and stuff that we hear day to day about socialism and communism, like this big bad thing that we learn in like all of our lives and all of our history courses. And it once you're on like social media and you talk with different people who actually have an understanding of stuff, and it's not like those talking points that are just like antagonistic towards like socialism and communism, rather than just like really trying to understand what it is.
Yeah.
So
well, it's all straw man. It's like the things you learn in school are kind of the worst version of the argument, I guess. Yeah.
Or not really telling you the complete history about the. So I think what really got me into it was like, it was an Africana studies course that I took freshman year. In the class, we talked about like how, the professor basically said that there, like throughout our history, there been like 3 stages of like human relationships. He said that first it was lords and serfs, and then slaves and masters, and now worker and employer, pretty much.
Yeah.
And like just thinking about that, like that kind of got me thinking about like, what's going on with like capitalism first. Yeah. But I still don't really understand what capitalism is. Okay. But like just that course kind of inspired me to start thinking about stuff. And then I started to focus more on like race and stuff like that. But then recently, I don't think I think recently, like over the past like 2-3 months, I've been trying to really understand this stuff through like just like learning about history and like anti-communism that arose like after World War II. Okay. But so does that answer?
Yeah, it does. So yeah, your professor talked about those relationships, and it kind of put it in the context of like a larger history of like like those power relationships of someone who's more powerful, like lording power over someone who's less powerful, and then he put kind of capitalism in that same context, and that got you thinking of like, what's the common thread here? Is there still some sort of evil oppressive force present in capitalism that we should worry about or figure out?
And then like just so I think what kind of led me more towards wanting to understand communism is like how in like Western culture it's like pretty much demonized, I would say. Socialism less, but communism, I feel like when people hear that word, it's like a reaction to it, like a negative reaction to it, or people.
Well, not so much anymore. I mean, kind of. It's like there's a large portion that will kind of ridicule it, but then there's a growing population that has positive feelings about it, which I think is interesting. I don't know if it's quite the red menace that it was in like the 70s in the Cold War, right? I don't know if people are like afraid of communism. In the way that like the U.S. government tried to make people afraid of it. earlier.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's definitely this ridiculed out of hand by most people. Mm-hmm. It's like, what are you doing? But yeah, I don't know. Do you see that, like that kind of growing, at least sympathetic response to communist ideas, or people just embracing them full out?
I think people are much more
like, just in your friend group, what's the temperature around this sort of thing?
We're like curious about stuff. We're really curious about stuff. Mm-hmm. Like everything going on with like workers at Amazon, workers at like just like how
union stuff, you know.
Like what else was it? It was like, okay, so with the CDC, they like why, what word am I looking for? And this it's not like anti-vax stuff or anything like that, but like the CDC basically sent people back to work, and they lowered the window for like isolation period,
right,
and stuff like that. So now workers have to go to work. People who don't work from home, they don't have those, like their jobs require them to go work and all of that. So it's, I don't know, it just seems like
surprise, surprise, those are all lower class jobs.
Yeah, you know, like kind of people are disposable in some ways, like, and like they're praised as like frontline workers. They are protecting our country. Meanwhile, these people are underpaid, and like I think the minimum wage hasn't increased. And like I don't want to misquote a number, but I think like in the 80s or something. It's like it hasn't really increased like any substantial.
Yeah, well, something weird happened, I think, in 1970, where the wages just in general stagnated in a weird way. Like it was this really nice positive trend, and then all of a sudden, like 1970, like flatlined.
Yeah,
and I still don't fully understand why that happened or what policies were put in place that year. But stagnant wages plus, an economic policy that kind of embraces inflation means that everyone is just getting poorer all of the time if you don't constantly try to make more money. I mean, your point about people being disposable and this whole frontline worker thing, like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. We don't like treat them that way, really. Like the frontline workers are either just kind of low paying jobs, like, people making your food for you at Wawa or whatever else, or it's like healthcare people, which those are higher paying jobs for sure. Although interestingly, I think the healthcare workers feel just as kind of left out as everyone else. Yeah, you can let him out. I mean, he'll never be happy with anything, but you can, we'll see if he... Yeah, sure. He'll be back. All right. But yeah, there's, I don't know. Going back to capitalism, I read Capitalist Realism.
Okay.
And did you finish that book, or did you just get partway through it?
I never finished it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
you finished it before I did.
I mean, you got the gist, I'm sure. Nothing crazy happened at the end. But yeah, he characterized capitalism as like this all-powerful, all-perverting squid with many tentacles that kind of finds its way into every aspect of society and every relationship you have and everything you do. And I mean, in a way, he's right. Like, I could agree with him in the sense that if you want to, there's kind of depressing truths to be found everywhere about how the rich always get richer and the poor continue to get more poor. And people who have lower social status get treated as disposable. All these sorts of things. And I think we, like people like Mark Fisher who wrote that book, try to pin it on capitalism as the thing that causes all of that terrible stuff to happen. And I mean, that's a very attractive proposition. If you say all of these horrible, evil aspects of reality that you see and witness are actually just due to this economic system, which we can choose to not have, let's choose to not have it, right? And all that would go away. And the only thing that I disagree with is I think it's more of some kind of natural law that is a little bit trickier to dispose of than some sort of manufactured economic system that we could cast aside at our whim. I don't know. Do you what do you think about that? Which perspective is the correct perspective with capitalism? Do you think there is some alternate system that we could put in place that would fix all of these things that capitalism essentially does to society and makes, perverts?
Is there hope?
Is there hope for us?
The thing for me is that capitalism has been like the Western world's like dominating economic system, or it is a dominating economic system pretty much. And there had been like, so I'm gonna kind of like go on like history tangents for a little bit. So like after World War II and like before World War II, I didn't know this, but like the Communist Party was like very popular in Europe and like Italy and in Germany and Greece and all those countries. And those, they were influencing other European countries. And it kind of seems like the capitalist countries would be the United States and what's another capitalist country?
Like the UK, were they kind of a more free market?
And during this time, they were like trying to expand into third world nations and all of that. And okay, so what am I saying?
So there's a connection there between the countries that after World War II were more free market capitalist and imperialist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before, like leading up to World War I too, like the U.S. was, colonized the Philippines and like it was already a history, of that. But as socialism started to emerge, I think after like it was popular, started to get popular like after the Bolshevik Revolution, I think, in Russia. I'm still like learning about this, but so I guess my point is that capitalism can exist, but if other movements that are favorable to the people are also like existing, why are the capitalist countries intervening in those spaces? And this reminds me of like the CIA and stuff. So apparently with the Italian Communist Party and like after World War II was popular and they like beat the Democrats or whatever, and the United States didn't want. So there's also I'm all over the place, but it's like the Soviets were they didn't. Okay, what am I saying? Let me break it down a little bit because
I mean, it sounds like you're saying that there were countries that were kind of leaning more communist, or parties that were more communist that were doing fine and were popular, but then external capitalist forces always tried to get their fingers in it. And why is that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So like, okay, let me just focus on the Italy example. So with that, the U.S. funded like a mass like writing campaign for like Italian Americans to their like Italian family members back at home, telling them that communism is the boogeyman, even though they had favorable conditions under communism. Like, it's the boogeyman. It needs to be expelled and da 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 da. And funny. Like, it was like a large investment in like reducing or thwarting these like socialist movements, and it only grew stronger and stronger like during the Cold War, because there was this assumption that or this belief that Russia was expansionist and trying to like take over all of Eastern Europe. But I was listening to a podcast, and the guy, I forget his name, but it's a podcast called The Socialist Program. And he was basically like kind of debunked that narrative, because after World War II, Russia's army was completely like weakened. They lost like 27 million soldiers because the Nazis came in through Ukraine, which is another situation that like is connected to that history. And like basically destroyed their army in a way. But they
let him in. I think he's whining again.
Oh, hey, Clarence. Even though like the Nazis lost or whatever, but like they're
they took a huge toll on the Russians.
The
Russians really pulled their weight in World War II.
But like so that's where like the communist boogeyman comes into play. And then there's like during the Cold War, there were like so many like CIA interventions in other countries who had in like these countries, like in the case, I tend to jump around a lot when I talk about stuff, because I don't know why, I gotta work on that. But
good.
In the case of like Indonesia with that whole situation, the government wasn't completely anti-capitalist because they were like partnering with these countries, but they didn't want those countries like monopolizing all their resources, like, and leaving their people poorer, because they just like were free from colonialism. And like in Indonesia, like they just got free from the Dutch and the Japanese and stuff like that. So it's like they were trying to build their countries up, and most of them were like socialist movements. But like, I don't know, I guess the overall point I'm trying to make is that like it just seems like capitalism, or these countries wanted that to be the main system, and like weren't really allowing these countries who weren't really who didn't want capitalism, and it wasn't favorable to their people. Like the people thought it was more like popular, the Communist Party, as opposed to capitalism. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly this element of like, you know, the American government was trying to propagandize, was it Italy's people, like by doing that campaign of like, you know, and I'm sure all of the U.S. government officials that were, you know, running this propaganda campaign thought that they knew better than the Italian people, that communism is going to destroy their country. We need to do something to help them, to convince them and make them see and realize that communism is evil. Like, I'm sure that they, were believing whatever they believed. But it's kind of like this condescending sort of attitude where you think that you know better than someone else, so you're just going to manipulate them into believing what you think is the correct thing to believe, which I don't love. Even though it's like all of politics is manipulating a voter base that you believe to be stupid into just whatever you want them to do. So yeah, I don't like that.
I think it's just more interesting though when it's like outside of your own country, like you're intervening in another country's affairs. Like, I don't know, that's just that. I don't know.
You're doing it to make America more safe, Rasheen. Make the world a safer place for America. Right? Yeah, sure. Well, it's always a good justification for some war that's like not, and has nothing to do with you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I wanted, it's stuff like I want to talk about like the Iraq War now.
Yes.
But I feel like I just don't know enough to even have an intelligent opinion. I just know that it all seems just awful and stupid and evil.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all I have to say about it, you know?
Yeah, well, and I never knew this, and I feel like a lot of people probably don't, but Saddam Hussein was a partner of the United States.
Yeah.
During, like, when the Iraq War first started to, like, brew or whatever, like, he was appointed to take over Mossadegh. No, that was in Iran, I think. Iraq was different. Hussein was... there was
Who's
like
the leader of Al Qaeda, and at some point, what were we like friends with Al Qaeda or something like that?
I don't think Hussein was. I'm not sure if he was the leader of Al Qaeda.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Okay, so basically, in Iraq, there was a socialist movement or a communist movement that was growing, and so I forget the leader's name, but during that time, the leader was trying to like nationalize the oil or something. And the U.S. wanted a piece, and the Brits wanted a piece of the oil. So they wanted like to prop a pro-capitalist person up. Yeah. And Saddam Hussein was a part of the Ba'ath Party, who were like anti-communist.
Okay.
And like, so they opposed the leader, and so a bunch of stuff happened. Saddam Hussein got propped up as the leader, and he was funded by the U.S. and the France and a bunch of European countries, like to fight the. Who was he fighting against? He was fighting against somebody.
Well, all of like everything in the Middle East is very complicated, you know, because there's so many factions, and you know, one day we're supporting this person because the enemy, their enemy is our enemy, so we're going to help them, and then the next day it all switches.
Yeah. But
in another sense, it's also very simple in that it's just like we need to stop getting involved in like stuff that's not our business. Yeah. And that's it. Like, people act as though, I mean, many of these, arrangements and conflicts in the Middle East are very complicated, but it's like, it doesn't have to be. Like, you could just follow more basic principles, and of course there will be some consequences that you don't like from that. But it will long term resolve a lot nicer than like doing all this crazy, stuff where you're sending money to like 3 different people at once because they kind of share your interests. Yeah. Destabilizing everything. Anyways, so I don't know if I cut you off there because
No. Yeah.
Let's go back to propaganda a little bit.
Okay.
So something that is kind of that piqued my interest, and maybe you had the same experience, is like the moment you realize that you've been the target of propaganda. You
just feel so vulnerable.
It's like, what is my reality? Like,
yeah,
and I felt that way a little bit learning about Russia in particular, learning that they had a much more significant role in defeating the Nazis in World War II that I feel like was never really emphasized. America was portrayed as the superhero that came in at the end and fixed everything with a big bomb. Yeah, that's not really, how that went.
Tell me more about that.
I mean, I believed it mostly just because I heard this one news guy that I trust just explaining how Russia's force was a lot more significant. So I'm taking this guy's word for it that I was watching.
Okay.
To be fair. But also learning about how, the nuclear bombs that we dropped in Japan were not quite as, were really not quite as necessary for stopping the war. Like the war was going to end.
Yeah.
And we kind of wanted to drop the bombs, I think for a display of power towards Russia. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the world, just to show that we had this incredible power. And so it's like a combination of both those things is, hearing smart people talking about how Russia had a, much more significant role than the U.S. did in winning World War II, and also learning about the kind of the circumstances around us dropping the bomb and the 2 bombs in Japan. Mm-hmm. That was one of those moments where I was like, I felt like I'd been lied to. And also just watching an interview recently of Vladimir Putin.
Okay.
Where he just kind of seemed like a normal-ish dude. Mm-hmm. And there is something about propaganda which makes you believe that someone's a demon. Mm-hmm. And seeing that he's not a demon, he's a person. And maybe my understanding of things are a little bit too simple. Yeah. Like, that was another moment for me. What were your moments that felt weird?
Well, that's interesting that you brought the Russia propaganda situation up, and definitely like for now with everything going on with the Ukraine and NATO and stuff like that. So I think pretty much over the past 4 or 5 years or whatever, I feel like Russia has been like all the Russiagate stuff and all the Russia is meddling in our elections and stuff like that. But then I come to learn that under the Obama administration, the CIA funded a neo-Nazi group in Ukraine. And like that neo-Nazi group that they funded in 2014 is currently like, they are basically the military. They are not infiltrated, but like they are the military now.
Okay.
And like, so yeah, but like all the media and stuff talks about, oh, Russia is organizing troops, but meanwhile, Russia is organizing troops within their country on their because.
And we're funding the Ukraine army directly, or you're saying it's a neo-Nazi group, but it's essentially, it is the Ukraine military.
It's and
or maybe a large militia in Ukraine or something.
I think it's the military. Like they're in the government now. I might be misquoting it, but I think it's either their. But I guess
that makes sense to me. Sounds like something the U.S. would do. Is like they see Russia lining up on the border with Ukraine. They think, all right, we'll support Ukraine. We'll send them money and weapons so that they can. And this is how things escalate.
But like with the World War II stuff about how Russia won and all of that, like they took a lot of damage because the Nazis came in through Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this current situation where Putin is so like resistant to just giving up Ukraine is because like that's because Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union, and that's where the Germans invaded Ukraine. So that is just like a lot of history there and a lot of like memory about like a traumatic time, I guess, that is like important for understanding today's condition, I guess.
Right.
Like Russia they don't want, or Putin really doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO because NATO, and I didn't know this, that like when NATO was formed, Russia asked to be, or the Soviets asked to be a part of NATO, but the U.S. denied that request. And then that's when they formed the Warsaw Pact or whatever. But yeah, just like stuff like that. Like you just, and it's annoying though, because like you think you know about stuff and you talk so confidently about it. Like, China this, Russia that, Russia that. Whole time You don't even really know.
I know. Yeah, I just feel like an idiot. It's yeah.
And not even just like an idiot, but just like mean, or not mean, but like, I guess
just
kind of
so confident and so wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like feeling like that. So.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely after having a few of those experiences, then I was just like tried to be a lot more conservative about the things that I claimed to know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know that this is a table, that I am here, and nothing else. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not going to make nearly as many claims as I used to, because that's such an unpleasant experience, being so like confident about something just to be proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Not, you know, I just changed the way I talk. You know, I just think that might be true. You know, or it's 60% chance maybe, if I had to guess, just to leave yourself an out because you don't know.
Yeah.
Half the time.
Yeah.
More than half the time, it seems like.
And I think it's also just important to come from a place of like just being okay with knowing that you don't know everything, and just, I don't know, for me it's just like relieving to me, like wow, I really don't know anything.
Yeah.
But but I don't, but like there is truth out there, like I don't know.
Yeah, you're not becoming some like relativist or whatever, where you don't believe anything is true. Yeah, you're just more conservative, like, because you realize you don't know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The world is big and complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I carry that into how I describe my religious beliefs now. I don't know if you feel the same way, of like how you describe your beliefs about God and Christianity and stuff. Did it kind of go through any of these same processes that you went through with political beliefs?
Yeah. And I think most of it is like related to like race for me. Like, I grew up going to a church that had like a white Jesus on the wall, like in a black church, a bunch of black people.
Oh, really?
And it's like,
yeah, I guess that makes sense. White Jesus is everywhere.
You know, like, and then you learn that, oh, for one, Jesus wasn't white. That whiteness is like an invention, or, you know, stuff like that. And then like
that is so interesting. Like, was it a person that decided that they were just going to make Jesus white? Like, how did that happen exactly? Or was it just kind of like an innocent, like, I just assume he looks like me kind of thing? I don't know.
I think it was intentional. I've read.
Who did it? Who do you think did it? The CIA? Probably.
Probably was.
Probably.
I'm crying. I think there is a name of the guy who, like, it's like the famous painting of the white Jesus. I forget his name, but like when everything is like white, you know, your deities, your gods, your everything, you make them white. But growing up and seeing that, it's like I went through a struggle of like, dang, is Christianity for me as a black person? Like, and a lot of people still are. Like, it's a big thing. Like, especially for African Americans specifically, because we were like, you know, forced. Christianity was forced upon us in a way. Well, it was in America. So like, you know, you have. I feel like it was harder for me because I have like a violent history attached to it. There's like a violence attached to it. But I also know that for me, like on a spiritual level, like I feel like Jesus exists for me. So I had like a
and then like all those personal experiences, right?
Yeah,
with God that are still.
And impactful. I know a lot of black people who still love God and stuff. Yeah. But sometimes when you know, when you're a Christian and you're black and you have friends and stuff who aren't Christian, and they talk about like, you know, the history of Christianity, and and like how
kind of makes you want to distance yourself from it a little bit. Yeah.
It really does make you rethink things. Yeah. And it's like, dang, because it's like, wow, it's not a lie that people were indoctrinated with Christianity, but that doesn't.
It's another one of those things where it's like kind of the imperialist nations thought, I know what's best for these people. Mm-hmm. Christianity, like just that, it was that kind of condescending, I know what you should believe. Yeah. That was, And
it wasn't like an option. It wasn't like, hey, there's it was just like, y'all have to be Christian. Yeah. And we're going to be violent about it. So it's like, Christianity has a bad...
For your own good.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's tough.
What about you with your faith?
I don't have to deal with any of that. That's kind of nice. I mean, you have to deal with it in the sense that, like, you have to decide what you think about it. But I don't have the same emotional history, like, or emotional conflict with it that you probably do. I don't know, man. I am kind of the type of person that people just assume that I'm high all the time, just with my personality. Because I'm pretty trippy dude, I guess. I just think about things in a zoomed out sort of way. And so I'm just thinking a lot about the nature of truth itself. Like, it's just like, it doesn't seem like things are quite that simple, Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like anyone really has things figured out. And it does seem like many professions of faith require this certainty about your ideology, right? Like there are professions of faith. Sounds the ding. Yeah, like, I believe Jesus Christ is Lord and he saved my sins. And me being certain of that is the thing that saves me, which is tough for me as I kind of have this more hesitant or strained relationship with ideology. Like, I fundamentally just don't trust ideology as something that's true. I just think of them as things that are useful. When it comes to political ideologies, or just ideas about economics or how the mind works, it's like we have a simple version of it that's just good enough to help us live and survive. Okay. That's how I feel about, belief systems, essentially.
Okay.
And reality is something that's way beyond that. It's so much more complicated than what our simple mental models actually are. And so I just have this weird time, like, I feel like modern religions are at the level of ideology, like this simplified version of things. And I'm supposed to believe in that. But I really want to get to, like, the more complicated reality of things,
What do you mean by the complicated reality?
It's like what we were saying about being less certain of things. Like, I'm just more conservative about the things that I say I know.
Okay.
I'm confident that, this table is right here. Great. I'm, like, pretty darn confident that Jesus existed as a person, right? Like, there's lots of historical records of him existing. So, and then I might assign a percentage to that, like 98% or something. Yeah, whatever. And then there's other facts like the resurrection itself. It's like, okay, maybe it's not 98%. Maybe it's like, let's say 50-50. Like it's a real possibility. There's less evidence supporting it, but it's still like just kind of whatever you could be convinced of. I'd assign a percentage of how likely that is to be true in my mind. And that's just kind of a different thing to me than saying I am certain of this.
Okay.
I don't know. I think a lot of it is just me overthinking stuff, to be honest. Like, because at some point, if something is probably true, you just believe it. You just behave as if it's true. You behave as if you're certain of it.
Yeah.
And then you can live your life, and maybe I need to do a little bit more of that.
Yeah. I don't know why that reminded me of like what you were just saying. It reminded me of like when people die and they say they have like their NDEs or whatever, and then they talk about like going to heaven and all of that, and they come back and talk about it. I know like a lot of Christians love that, but I don't know if I'm on board with all of that completely. As far as like, I don't know, because it's like it's their personal experience. So I guess how do you like I feel like this is unrelated.
No, it's related.
But like, I don't know. Everybody like I can see what I can see now. This is like, but I don't know what goes on outside. Like I'm just, it's that, I guess it's like uncertainty about stuff, I guess. Like I don't know what's beyond this. And like when somebody says, I don't know, I just can't, I have a hard time accepting stuff about like the other world or whatever, or heaven or whatever, because like you haven't experienced it yourself, I guess.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that their experience isn't true either.
Yeah. So if someone is telling a story about how they died for a few minutes and they're like, I saw Jesus, I gave him a hug, or whatever these stories are. So you believe they're being genuine, or no? Like step one, do you think they're retelling a real experience they had?
I mean, it's real to them, I guess. But like, I don't know if it actually happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
yeah, you don't. Yeah.
So like, who was there? Did it really happen, or were you just like?
Maybe their body knew they were dying, so it released a bunch of DMT, just like all at once.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a really interesting field, though. Is like, I should read more accounts of people with near death or actual death experiences to see what the kind of patterns are.
I don't know why I got on these, but
yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. I mean, but you're right. Like, just because it's something that's hard to imagine doesn't mean it's not real. Like, that's I think it's Daniel Dennett called that the philosopher's dilemma, or the philosopher's fallacy, rather. Mistaking a failure of imagination for an insight into necessity, which was like, so basically, if just because I can't imagine something being true, I think, oh, it must not be true then. Yeah. When really it's just your brain being incapable of grasping the truth. Like, that's, you're right. Yeah. I think it's good to be careful when, like, I like being cynical about stuff and kind of wiping away the extra garbage, maybe. But then you got to be careful to not be so arrogant as to dismiss something that might be true just because you can't imagine.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one thing that I still have and cherish is like all these personal experiences I've had with God, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you feel the same ways. Some people, it seems like if they're convinced of some maybe someone convinces them that Christianity is bad, then they also throw out their kind of relationship with God or all those experiences. They think, well, maybe I just imagined it or something. I don't think that would ever happen with me, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'm still got that. It's still such an obviously wonderful thing is to like pray and feel God, like whatever that means. It's obviously real in some sense.
Yeah. And to just like have hope. Like, I feel like, I don't know, whether it's God or whether it's Jesus or Muhammad or whatever, I feel like people really desire to have some sort of like, force that exists outside themselves to help guide them along their life, that reminds them that the world isn't so dark and it's not gonna, like, they're not gonna be destroyed or crushed by the weight of the world and stuff like that. I feel like, for me, I find that in Jesus. Like, I don't have to be hopeless. Like, I don't know. I just feel more hopeful when I, pray and spend time with God, or just like, because this world is really like, it'll really have you out here depressed. Like, it really will really like.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. It's just, and I feel like we can hope for better stuff and hope for more stuff. I'm not like an optimist, but like, I'm also not like a nihilist or a pessimist about life.
Yeah, that would be the opposite of an optimist. But yeah, nihilist is kind of an adjacent sort of position where you believe that nothing matters,
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's why I feel like with like the resurgence of like new age spirituality and stuff like that, which I feel like there's a lot of like Christian elements within it, like manifesting and like speaking it into existence and stuff. A lot of these like features of like new age spirituality, like you see it on TikTok. Everybody's like,
oh really?
Yeah, and I just really feel like it's because people just like we need something more than what we have, or like.
Well, I think they're probably finding the same truths that people found and just described it differently, right?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah.
There's a great, did you see the meme that Jordan posted? That was a TikTok of the girl who was like, when you realize that the universe is the epitome of daddy energy, and so you start talking to it like a dad.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that now.
And the caption was like, TikTok teenagers are one step closer to reinventing Abrahamic religion.
No, I haven't.
It's so funny. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, that was one of those maybe new age TikToks that are like supposedly way out there, but they're just like describing some of the same core concepts of like Christian spirituality.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
But it's kind of encouraging when you see the same thing in like 4 religions. I always think, well, that part is probably true. If it keeps showing up everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real quick, do you want to take a quick break? I want to open a window because it's so freaking hot, and I don't know if you want to get in
you get
water.
some break. Okay. Yeah, I'll get some more water.
So tell me about children. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think about like childhood development very much, or not too much?
In terms of gender and stuff, yeah.
In terms of gender?
Yeah.
Say more. What do you mean?
In terms of like, I guess like how boys are raised, like don't cry, don't show emotions, like be a robot, and then girls like you have too many emotions, you're too much.
Yeah.
Like thinking about, I like to think about childhood stuff because it really helps me to think about how people behave when they're adults, and like wounds that aren't healed when they're younger. Like a lot of men who are like just functionally incapable of incapable of like seeing how they feel and stuff, and like, but it makes sense kind of because like when you're a kid, like that's the age where like you're being molded, like your brain is forming, and like all of those foundational like understandings of like who we are as human beings like are being like instilled in us. So during that time, like, and for me personally, I remember my dad telling me not to cry. Like that's like a little girl's cry and stuff like that. So when it kind of messes you up. Like, so I think there's a lot of different useful ways to think about like I guess socialization as like a kid and stuff, whether it's in terms of gender or like other types of stuff. What are your thoughts on stuff like that? Like,
yeah, well, I think sex and gender is endlessly fascinating. I really do, and it's so tough. I think it's tough because people are trying to figure out what's the correct way to raise a kid, or like correct way to raise a boy or girl. You know, should you do it differently at all? If so, like exactly how should you do it differently?
Yeah.
But there's simply no standard for us to look to exactly. You know, it's like everyone's just opinions about it.
Yeah.
It's not like you can run a science experiment to figure out what the best way to raise a kid is. So yeah, I think about it a lot. And you're totally right. It's, you know, pretty much every evil behavior you observe in an adult, you can, you know, it's explained by something, whether it's nature or nurture. You can always explain it, and that doesn't excuse it. You know, it's not like they shouldn't be punished for doing wrong things as an adult, but you know, it really it helps so much to understand why people are the way that they are. Yeah, and in terms of like boys and girls and raising them, it's so, I don't know, it's really interesting. I think parents just need to just continue to have an open dialogue with each other, because like, first of all, you're never prepared as a parent to have a kid. You just never are. And there's going to be so many challenges that you face that you're not going to be prepared for, right? Like, and I think we just need to, people need a network that they can talk with other parents and figure things out. Like, you know, are you prepared as a parent? Like, what if your kid comes up and says that they're gay? Like, how do you respond exactly? Are you prepared to kind of, like, every subtlety of your response is going to have such a huge impact on them, right? In a moment like that. And I don't know. Yeah. I'm certainly not prepared, nor do I think I have the answers, but I do agree with a lot of kind of maybe some of the more modern notions of like, yes, you should express your feelings, and even if you're a boy, you know. I do think that boys and girls are different, like on average. I did read the book, what's it called? Embodied by Preston Sprinkle, he's a Christian author. And the book was about transgenderism. So it was kind of an analysis of just sex and gender, some stories that he had like interacting with transgender like kids and teenagers and stuff like that. Overview of some statistics, all that sort of stuff. Review of like some neuroscience, trying to like give a whole picture of like, all right, what's the landscape of like male and female gender and how it's represented in people. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it was a pretty good read, you know. It's definitely like, it's from a Christian perspective, so he kind of lands sort of where you would expect him to land, but he was also a very loving person who is, you know, not annoying. to listen to.
Mm-hmm. As far as gender, do you think that as a boy you were like you believe like the emotion stuff and all that? Like, do you think you absorbed that?
Not really.
Okay.
My dad wasn't like he wasn't like a super tough sort of guy. Like, so I didn't get any like speeches about manning up or anything like that. Yeah, I don't know. I was a pretty emotionless child in a way, though. I don't know. It's hard analyzing your own childhood. It's like
a lot of stuff you just can't remember too.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you can't remember half of it. And the stuff you do remember, you experienced it as an 11-year-old. So you have an 11-year-old's understanding of what happened, which is not a very good understanding of what happened, right? Like, I don't know. I am very grateful for both my parents because, I had a stable home, particularly in like the first 10 years of my life, like, which you don't remember that, but I'm pretty sure that's probably the most important developmentally. And by the time things got a little more crazy with like them getting a divorce and stuff, I was kind of a young teenager. And I think that's kind of when you're supposed to be learning how to be an adult anyways. So even though that was like a lot to process and deal with, I at least kind of landed on my feet, I feel like.
Yeah, I actually seen something recently on that. It said like children whose parents divorce, if they're like teenagers or something, it's less like depressing for them and stuff. They don't like it's not that impactful on them. I mean, it does impact them, like, but it's not as emotionally damaging as if they were like kids, which makes sense because, and that just goes back to as kids, like they're just you're so vulnerable and like just like the decisions that your parents are making and like that. I'm not sure which age gap it is, but I guess before 10 or. But I do think that from 0 to 2, I was reading in the Body Keeps the Score book.
Oh, yeah, I actually just downloaded that. I'm going to read it soon. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or listen to it, rather. But
I think the author, he said that from 0 to 2, like, those are the ages where it counts the most.
Yeah.
Like...
Which is not what you'd expect, because it's like, what is this kid doing? Nothing.
Yeah. Because apparently kids are very resilient and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But from 0 to 2, if, like... it's like if they had like a good childhood, or I don't even, they had like a good childhood from 0 to 2, or where their parents were loving them and interacting with them and stuff like that, they'll be more resilient later on in life, as opposed to if they had like a really hard life, or like parents unresponsive and just like emotional neglect and stuff like that. They're less likely to really to be okay, I guess, later on or whatever. Yeah. So that just reminded me of how, like, with the divorce stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend was talking about how there's another book called Behave, which I just started, and it's a beast of a book. It's super long. But he was talking about, like, you can just measure the level of cortisol in a very young person's brain. And if it's really high, like basically if they're under a lot of stress as a very young person, that's a really strongly correlated with, like, are they going to be in jail when they're 30, basically just like, and it's tough to say, is that a predictor, or is it just those just two facts just correlated, if they're stressed out as a kid, then they're probably in an unstable home situation, which leads to X, Y, and Z, and then they ended up being a criminal, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives you this picture of kind of there's no hope, like this deterministic, you have no free will sort of picture of the world, where like you're kind of doomed to fail if you're if you're like treated poorly as a really young person. This is kind of related to something else I wanted to ask you. So like,
okay,
I remember kind of later when we were both, I think, volunteering at like some not youth, what's it called? Freedom Outreach event that was at the Little Barn.
Okay.
And someone was teaching, I don't want to portray the name, but he talked about how people in Wilmington are referred to as like at-risk kids, right? And he didn't like that phrase. Do you remember that?
Are you talking about?
Yeah. And he asked you something about like how you feel like you got out of that typical path of like kids in Wilmington who end up like, you know, being a drug dealer and getting stuck like in that path that seems likely, I guess, or strongly determined by those environments. And I don't know, I wanted to hear your response about that term, like at risk. Like he was saying he didn't like the term at risk because it implied that the kids had no power to get out. Or something like that. He didn't like how it framed them as helpless to change their situation, which I understood. Like I got what he was saying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just obviously true. Like if you're born in an area with like an unstable home life and X, Y, and Z, like you're going to have a rough time, and there's a much higher chance that like you're going to be stuck in that situation. So I don't know. I wanted to hear your response to that idea, that phrase.
Yeah, I feel like it's like, so nobody wants to like quote unquote throw their life away or whatever, like, but you can't like ignore the reality that like certain circumstances are like kind of like, yes, like you do have free will and stuff like that, and you can make decisions, but sometimes people are put in positions where it's harder for them to choose or make decisions because like you grow up. And so for me personally, so and I guess this is important to like, I guess, point out like race and stuff, like growing up and your schools are like militarized in a way, like people like when adults have like antagonistic like attitudes toward kids. Like I remember growing up and like just being a kid in school and like like, you know, being a kid in class and like having teachers scold me and just like being very like mean in a way. Like I don't know, like even though I was cutting up and stuff, I was still a kid. But a lot of the times kids, especially like black boys growing up, like we're treated kind of like adults in a way. Like I remember like teachers just arguing with kids but you know, the kids are suspended and stuff like that. So now you don't have a really, you know, like, what am I talking about? I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I guess, okay, so some people view education as like the key out of stuff.
Right. Well, that's something that you said in your answer, is you said you had people around you that valued education, and that was like a big factor.
Yeah. But now as I like learn more, as I'm like an adult now, I have a different perspective now. Oh, okay. I don't even remember my answer. But yeah. Okay, one thing I will say though is that community is important. Having mentors in your life. A lot of people don't have that. Like, a lot of my friends and stuff that I know, they don't really have mentors. I was lucky to have, like, people in my life who would pick me up. Like, people need people who are going to be committed. Like,
yeah.
And, you know, who have resources and stuff like that to teach them. And, like, you know, when you have somebody that's constantly in your life and, like, actually caring and stuff like that. And I think that's just basic, like, social psychology, I guess, like, about how kids, like, when you're younger, how you're socialized. When you have people who are you know, just investing in your life. I guess I was quote unquote at risk too because I was in the same environment. But I don't know. I just feel like I don't know if I was lucky or to just have people in my life who would. Not saying other people don't have that, but we see how
many people don't.
Yeah, many people don't. Many people don't.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times when people just like look at in the city kids and stuff like that, like they just think, oh, they're just making bad decisions all the time. They're just making bad decisions, but they're not acknowledging like their condition, like as far as like how things are set up. Like you can't get a job because like you didn't graduate, or you didn't graduate because your school had a hostile environment towards you, or all these several factors. There's a lot of factors.
It takes a monumental amount of effort to escape from this track that's been laid for you, essentially.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's but like everything is pressuring you down a path, essentially.
Yeah.
And unless you just are inspired to just exert a massive amount of effort to get out of it, that's just the path you go down. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it can't all just be. I don't know. I'm not sure if you can like bootstrap and will your way out of everything.
Right. Is that even possible in some cases? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like stuff that are outside of my control. How about they work on that to make it easier? Like I don't know. Life is really not easy for everybody. Like people really don't have the same experience, like across racial lines and stuff like that. Like it's just really hard. It's very hard. Like, and like some of like the most intelligent people I know live in the projects, live in the inner city and stuff like that, who like really inspire me to like keep going and stuff like that. But they just never really had chances to, you know, to access stuff. So, but
do you have an example of someone that kind of inspires you still, but they're kind of stuck just where they are?
Well, off the bat, I would just say my grandmom, I guess. But that's like she very intelligent, like pushing me to think about stuff and everything. But like she's still in poverty and stuff like that. She doesn't, you know, like hard to access healthcare and stuff like that. Just all these different things, like so that's important, I guess. Like as far as the at-risk thing, like you're at risk like for your health being bad and stuff like that. People just think, oh, at risk of like, oh, selling drugs, da-da-da. Like, I guess it's so much stuff. Like
you're at risk of everything.
Yeah,
for risk
in a
of
way.
Dying, being shot, you know, of not being able to get an education, not being able to get, you know, a place to live that's clean and affordable, and you're at risk of a lot of things. And like everything seems to converge based on like class from what I can tell. Like if you don't have money or power, I mean, those things they're not completely interchangeable, money and power, but they're closely related. Like if you're in the lower rung of society, you are just effed in every way.
It seems like that sometimes. It really does.
Yeah.
And then that's, you know, that's when I guess I don't know what I was about to say. I'll just leave that thought alone.
Well, I can go back to like kind of the pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, that's sort of the distasteful way, or it's the way that we like to make fun of that perspective, I guess, because it's an obviously absurd example. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstrap. It doesn't work. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of truth to the question, like, what's the productive mindset that would be empowering for an individual? Well, the most empowering mindset is believing that you have power, I guess. Like, kind of like Oprah Winfrey stuff, like just believe, or I don't know. Like, regardless of whether or not you do have any power, just believe you do, and maybe you'll have a chance of things working out. Like, I understand why it's kind of the same vein as like name it, claim it Christianity or something. It's like, all right, well, you know, maybe your leg won't be healed or something, but just like believe it super hard and maybe it'll work out. Okay, because that's the most productive thing that you can do. I get that, but it's also kind of irritating to listen to because these people they're often not acknowledging reality as much as maybe we would like them to.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, I guess like about the healing example, like, believe that you can be healed, but you have pills right on the table that you can take. But like, you know, like you can just take the pills. Like if pills are available or if resources are available for you to access that are, you know, okay, in honor of Black History Month, Martin Luther King said you can't tell a bootless man to pull himself up by his bootstraps.
He doesn't even have shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you can't. Yes, I think there's part of just believing you can do stuff, but there's also just like practical things that like don't make your life hard. That like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you need both. You need both. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to phrase it. Like, the easy thing for me to say is to just say, well, people who have power should just think about it and be generous, essentially, or something like that. But I want to say, I want to find something that's a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a solution than that, I guess. I don't know if I can. If I have it.
Like,
because yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, well, you know, sometimes people don't have boots to pull themselves up. Maybe we should get the rich Jeff Bezos to give us some money and buy people some boots so they can at least have a chance, you know? And I don't know. I didn't feel like just repeating that tired expression because, like, in a sense, it's true. It is true. Like, when wealth inequality is so vast, at some point there's a more moral responsibility that comes in. But at the same time, like, you know, Jeff Bezos compared to, you know, a poor person in Wilmington is probably the same difference as like me compared to someone in Haiti who is like, you know, in abject poverty. Like, I don't know.
I get an example. It's like, you tell somebody that their like diet is so bad they need to eat more fruits and vegetables. To get the fruits and vegetables, they have to go to a grocery store. But what if you don't have any grocery stores with fruit and vegetables in your like area. Like, so basically, how am I going to do it? Like, it's much harder for you to do it because you have to go out of your way. And like, what if you don't have a car and you're working like a minimum wage job and you can't afford a car, you can't afford insurance and all that. Mm-hmm. And like, this is just a small example, but just stuff like that. Like, I remember growing up, like there wasn't like a grocery store where we live, like, but you see like how these grocery stores are very accessible to like richer neighborhoods and stuff like that. So in a lot of ways, your health is at risk because you don't, it's not like these, I guess I'm saying like stuff that is quickly available to other groups of people, whether you're in a lot of ways, I like to think about class more than race. Race is definitely important and stuff, but I'm not sure if it's, I guess, in an intersectional perspective, but
well, I think I agree with you because in my opinion, class drives the mechanic in a more direct way than race. Race is kind of like a secondary thing on top of class, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the language to use to frame it, but like, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, so like a black family who lives in an affluent neighborhood who has access to everything more than a black family in a project, I would say is more privileged in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, certainly in that way.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
So.
Really, in terms of grocery stores, they're more privileged for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, part of the problem, I think, is that it's almost like a social psychological phenomenon of wherever you live, there is a median wealth, like a middle of the road sort of average income or something like that. And all of the Walgreens and the grocery store and the CVS, Walmart, they're all like selling products to the average person, you know? So they'll price yogurt at whatever, $3 because that's what the average person would pay for it, you know? And all that sort of stuff. And so if you fall below the average wealth for a particular community, every single store you go to is going to have products that are too expensive for you. And it's going to make you feel poor, right? And maybe you'll just think, oh, well, you know, I need yogurt, I need this stuff, which is true. And then you buy it. And then you end up spending a much more significant percentage of your budget for just the same sort of things and yada, yada. Where, like, let's say, you know, someone who's relatively poor in America that I was just describing, they might make 20 times more money than someone in, you know, Nigeria or something. But they still might feel more poor because they're, you know, because the relative wealth and all the people around them and stuff like that. Like, you know, if you went to some random third world country, you could probably buy a crap ton of food for $5 or something like that. Or the houses might just be smaller. Like the standard of livings would be lower. And yeah, you would, I don't know. I'm not articulating it quite in a very clear way, but I think that's part of the problem with someone who's poor relative to the people around them is there's like this psychological inferiority complex of like, oh, these people, you know, think they're better than me and all that sort of stuff. There's all of the stores, all the advertisements you get. They're all trying to sell you things that are too expensive for you.
Yeah.
And it makes you want things that are like out of your price range. And it's just, yeah, that's all like kind of trapping them in this horrible negative mindset and stuff. Like you say, you know, someone in the inner city has a hard time getting to the grocery store. And, you know, if you live in a, you know, 10 story apartment, you might be able to afford it. But, you know, someone in the inner city has a hard time getting to the grocery store. And, you know, if you live in a, you know, 10 story apartment, you might be able to afford it. But, you know, someone in the inner city has a hard time getting to the grocery store. But they still probably have an easier time getting to the grocery store than someone who has to walk 3 miles with like a jug on their head, you know, to get water. Mm-hmm. So compared to them, they have it great. And if they felt like, if they were comparing themselves to someone who is carrying a jug for 4 miles to get water, they might feel privileged and they might feel empowered. I don't know. Do I sound crazy right now? Like, or does it...
Are you like trying to say that like are you like
I'm just saying it's like there's this relative social psychological component to it. I guess.
I don't know, but I feel like when you do compare, like if you say, I have more than this next person, I don't know. I feel like that kind of minimizes your own experience, though. But that's not what you were saying, though. You were.
Nah, I mean, your own experience is informed by your feelings, though, right? Like, again, like let's say someone goes from living in a third world country where they have to walk 5 miles for water. They feel like that's normal. Mm-hmm. You know, like the things that they're mad about are like the fact that they stubbed their toe on a rock along the way. Mm-hmm. Everything else was like totally cool. Mm-hmm. Then they upgrade to living in a place where they only have to walk 1 mile and they get to like get groceries. Like they would be on top of the world. Mm-hmm. So like I do think that your experience is kind of created by whatever you feel like. If you feel like it's a good experience or if you feel like it's a bad experience. And if it's going to feel like a bad experience if all of the people around you have more money and a better standard of living than you do. It's going to feel like you're at the bottom of a well, like looking up, like, what's the deal, guys?
Yeah. And also, like, I feel like poor people are literally told to feel bad implicitly because they're told to aspire to wealth. Like, people are aspired to make money to not. So basically, like, you're told to not be poor, yet people are poor everywhere. So it's like that, yeah. So I think that psychologically that really does something to you. If you're like how you said you're looking from the bottom of the well up. Like everybody has money up here and I'm told that I'm supposed to make money and support my family or like, you know, be able to have money to spend and just be free, like financial freedom. Like that's like a big thing that's put to people. But if that was, I feel like if financial freedom was a thing that people could just have, like more people would have it. Like there wouldn't be like mass poverty, and homelessness. Like I wouldn't be seeing like that's another big thing, like homelessness. I wish I could just like
snap it out of existence. Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that's true is any amount of money can be, you know, fuck you money if you're okay living on rice and beans, you know? Mm-hmm. Like I could, if I wanted to, retire right now and go live in a hut somewhere and eat rice and beans. And I could probably buy a lot of rice and beans.
Probably good.
And I could be financially independent. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. That's not the standard of living that society is telling me to have. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm. Yeah, and you're right. I think there's all sorts of messaging about the kind of stuff you should buy and the kind of life you should lead, the kind of house you should buy. I mean, the kind of houses that are available. It's like, I can't find, like, low-income housing is a real problem. We need more low-income housing, and it just doesn't exist. Like, you can't buy tiny houses very easily. Yeah. Even if you wanted to. Like, that's another problem is, like, yeah, there's so much. That's actually something I would love to get involved in at some point. It's like if I could actually provide lower, just cheaper, smaller housing for people. I feel like that would be making the world a better place, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we have no solutions for any of this, but like, yeah.
But it's good to think about it, though.
I guess, man.
To imagine possibilities.
Imagine there's no heaven. I don't know why it starts with no heaven. Like, that doesn't sound very good.
Yeah. I think no heaven is like the first.
That's the first line. I don't know. He was a communist. We don't. He's this communist boogeyman. All right, dude. Anything else? Anything else we should cover for next time? You said you wanted to start a podcast yourself. What was that going to be about?
I think we had a list. Let me find the list.
Okay. Were they topics all within one theme, or did they like just jump around?
It was pretty much going to be like random stuff. Like, I think what started it was, like when you have just a really deep, I think all podcasts start like this. You have a deep conversation about something. You're like, oh, we should start a podcast.
We're so smart. We should start. Yeah, that's how it goes.
In episode ideas, we have Black leadership and COINTELPRO, 60s and up, mental health, internal monologue. Oh yeah, my friend, she was talking about how she has an internal monologue. And I was like, wait, sometimes when I think, I can hear myself thinking and stuff like that or whatever. So we were thinking about like why more people thinking about like people who have internal monologues and people who don't have internal stuff like that.
That's really weird.
That is.
Some people, kind of think in images or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's a small percentage of people that don't think in words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get it.
National park disappearances, obscure animals,
obscure animals, like
just like finding random
just like
animals.
Weird animals.
Yeah, I just found out that there was an animal called like a Java pig or something like that. Something like that.
I don't know.
It looks like a pig, and they eat. They're like aggressive. They're more aggressive than pigs, and they live in like Arizona, and like they're like.
Yeah, I know. Like down south, they've got a real wild hog problem.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Are these kind of pigs just like wild and everywhere?
Yeah, they're wild. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they're very protective. Like if you try to approach them, or they'll approach you first. Like if you,
they'll kill you.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, no, I think it was in Texas where there was people who were renting out like a helicopter trip where people could get on the helicopter and they would fly around, and the person would pay money to like go shoot the pigs.
Okay.
Because there's so many that like they just need to kill more of them, and so they thought, I know, we'll sell this experience. So people will pay to go in a helicopter and fly around and shoot wild pigs in Texas or something like that. Yeah, it's weird. There's too many of them, and they can get pretty violent, crazy.
Oh, pigs do?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I heard that like if you release a domesticated, nice little piggy into the wild, they just go like feral real quick. Like it doesn't even take that long, and they just like they go crazy.
I wonder why.
I don't know. That is interesting. That like we think about adaptation as happening over many generations, but like kind of living beings adapt really quickly to different environments. I
think coyotes are being domesticated now.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, it makes sense though, because we're like building homes and stuff in their environment. So like we're like we had to come into contact with them more. That's interesting. Like in like 200 years, will what's like an animal that's not like really domesticated?
Whales.
Yeah, like will people have like I don't know. Just,
I don't know how you could domesticate a whale, but we'll try. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's some animals are just so like ferocious, like a lion. Like they're always gonna have that edge that they might just, bite your head off.
But do you think you could nurture them out of that though?
I think you could breed it out of them. Because what was the strange? I was listening to a Lex Friedman podcast with a guy who was doing research with Jane Goodall. You know Jane Goodall? He was like
the ape lady.
Yeah, ape lady. So this is the guy who like worked with her and like he knew her well. But he was saying how if you have a dog population, and some of them are going to be more aggressive than others, and it was spontaneously aggressive is what they're looking for, like the kind of aggression that just kind of like springs up in a moment. If you pick the dogs that don't exhibit that behavior and you breed those nice dogs, for lack of a better word, within like 3 generations of breeding them, their skull shape is different than it used to be. Like it's really weird how these different like the bodies of an animal and their personality and like how their brain works is all connected. And it can change in like just a few generations based on like the environment and how they breed together.
That's basically just like epigenetics, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what epigenetics means. Is it eugenics or both? It may be both, sort of.
Epigenetics is, I think it's like over time how gene expression changes over generations.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, I don't know very much about biology. I just listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
So I just end up accumulating these random facts.
Yeah.
Are you interested in biology? You've got your weird animal list, I guess.
Yeah. Not really interested. Like I'm just like curious about just stuff in general.
Yeah.
But about biology. And like evolution and stuff. Like I'm just what am I talking about? I think that I think I'm mainly interested in like unlearning stuff or like learning the history about like behind stuff that we just believe today, like whether it's biology or anything. Like so I thought the SAT was an accurate measure of intelligence and people still use that or whatever. But like apparently it's not. And like the history behind it is that the person who made the SAT only wanted to use it for his classroom to like try to measure how to get students ahead, but it wasn't supposed to be like this thing to use for everybody, but now it is, and people just think, oh, SAT. And I feel like since that's the precedent, like, oh, SAT is like can measure intelligence, all of your research is going to be biased to affirm that, even if it's not true.
Right.
So just like, but people relate to biology and say like, oh, this group of people, they have lower SATs because of their biology. But it's like, how when the SAT isn't even real? So it's like stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We can go. That's a touchy topic right there. I mean, have you heard of the book, The Bell Curve? That's kind of like the central.
Oh yeah.
Of that whole like deep dark cave of thought. But yeah, you're right. Like, just because you've made a standard doesn't mean it's a meaningful standard. Doesn't mean you should actually use it. Like, you know, or even like, let's say the SAT is a perfect description of human intelligence, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Who says that intelligence is something we should be valuing or focusing on specifically? And I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here because I think being, intelligent is a great thing. Good.
Yeah.
But, like the culture does assign value to particular things, and we use like particular metrics that are kind of like arbitrary. And then people use that as arguments for like racial superiority and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of mistakes get made through that analysis because the people aren't being as careful as they should about questioning like the metrics that they're using and how they're measuring stuff.
Yeah.
But that is definitely, I say all that, but I think that there is a very important discussion and more like, I think a sensitive and nuanced discussion that should be had about analyzing just all the different attributes of different races. Like, because it's true, the process of evolution, like the environment shapes the organisms in that environment, like, like if it's useful to be tall, then tall people are going to survive more frequently than short people. And then that population will get taller. Like, we're fine. Like, that's not like an offensive thing to say. But if there's like two genetic pools where this environment is selecting for, I don't know, good motor skill or something, then you can have that one gene pool, which is better at throwing baseballs than the other one. Or it could be closer to cognitive ability, which gets even more controversial. But there's no reason why that same process can occur. Like, it could be that this environment selects for higher cognitive, like, speciality than this other environment. So, I don't know. I think that those sorts of conversations should be had, but they should be had, like, obviously
carefully.
Like without, as best as you can, not being a total idiot about everything. Like, but inevitably, we're going to put our foot in our mouth and, like, be totally wrong about stuff and be horribly offensive. And I don't know if you can avoid it, but I don't know. I think through it all, we have to just keep that belief that all humans are equally valuable, Even if we discover that people are different, just say, like, that's okay. Everyone is still equally valuable and important, and, not adopt those, like, subtle racial superiority things, that kind of creep in to people's analysis.
Yeah. I think that would just be really hard because so much scholarship and stuff that is used today is, like, rooted in, like, or is borrowed from, like, eugenicist thought and, like, phrenology and all of that. They were just, like, so obsessed with, like, brains and stuff like that, which I guess kind of makes sense, like, for that era, like, where it was, like, in Europe, it was in Enlightenment, or, like,
yeah,
they were just so fascinated with, like, intelligence and stuff. So to, like, prove their already existing beliefs, or to, they said that this brain is this way because this person is smarter, or because this person is biologically superior or inferior, but come to find out that that's not what that actually meant, and it was just I don't know.
They clearly just they believe something, and they're trying to find evidence to support their belief. Yeah.
So I guess, like, confirmation bias. Like,
yeah.
On a mass scale.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because I definitely never want to sound like I'm agreeing with those kinds of people, you know? Because I don't. Like, I think they're fundamental. Yeah, like they're making an error in their analysis by having this confirmation bias at play. Well, first they have like a racial bias, and then they aren't able to kind of check that at the door and do good science. They kind of bring it with them, and then it skews their perspective of things, and they think, oh, well, this person has a slightly thicker brain fat material. That means they're better. It's like, all right, dude, that's not really what that means.
I'm pretty sure some of them didn't even have any like training, intellectual training, and like academia or anything. They were just like, I forget who it was, but like it was Linnaeus or one of the like early phrenologists, but like they didn't even go to school for studying science, but yet today we still like acknowledge their like academic contributions as like canonical or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just like
that's always so annoying when someone should have been discredited by now, and like we still reference their work all the time. It's like, come on.
Yeah. That reminds me, not John Adams, the capitalist creator guy, Adam Smith.
All right, yeah.
He said that bartering was a thing, and it was, but not in the way that he said it was. So like he said like human beings would just like trade with each other, like
closer to you.
Oh, human beings would just trade with each other. Oh, I just peeped that most of the time I was like,
I think it'll be fine. I'll just change the volume.
Human beings like with bartering, like like this person needs chickens or whatever, so they have eggs, or not eggs, but like trade them,
carrots,
like stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and then in economics, and I'm there's a book called Debt by David Graeber.
Okay.
And he's like an anthropologist, but he's also like leftist and stuff. And he, in his book Debt, is all about like, and I haven't finished yet. I'm like on chapter 2, but it's a long book too. But it just talks about like the origins of money and stuff like that, and how in economics there's just thought that like, it went from, what's the order of it? Like it went from bartering, like the trajectory of like the economic system in like early human history. It started with bartering, then it went to money, then eventually we got credit. But he basically says that credit actually preceded bartering.
Yeah.
And then it was credit, then bartering, then credit.
Or wouldn't it be bartering then credit then money, do you think? Or no, it's credit then bartering?
Well, his argument was that credit was our earliest system of like money.
How would that work exactly? Because it's essentially saying like, okay, you owe me something.
Yeah.
Right? That's credit. So I'll do this thing for you now, and you owe me one later. Maybe that's just all they did. Is they you owe me one.
Yeah, I think he talked about like in Mesopotamia, like in order to it was like attached to like they had to pay. I can't remember what it was, but basically what I'm trying to say is that Adam Smith was apparently wrong about how humans interacted early on.
Yeah.
But yet economists still use his like contributions, and like he still recognized as like this person who was right, but he was like it wasn't actually true. I had to send you the information on it.
Yeah, it'd be good. And this is tough because like everyone in all of history was wrong about something, but we have to parse whether or not the stuff they were wrong about invalidates their theories or not.
Yeah,
like I think in some cases it does. In some cases it's like, well, maybe
or
it's a little bit less right, but it's still mostly right or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like we just reject everything. Well, for some people, absolutely we reject everything. For me,
yeah,
like for knowledges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Sometimes it's easier to just be like, I don't trust you and your motives. Just get out. Yeah.
Well, Adam Smith, maybe it's a little different. Like maybe like this not saying like it's not like he as far as capitalism and stuff like that, people have arguments about it and stuff, but maybe there are some merits. I guess I'm just with stuff like that. I don't want to come from a place of just like I guess I lean more towards like left stuff like that. But I feel like if you're gonna have an argument or like take a solid stance against something like capitalism or whatever, at least read it or learn about it. I haven't read Adam Smith, but I'm sure that there are some stuff that I guess is useful for or maybe not. I don't know, but I don't.
I mean, I haven't read Adam Smith either, and I probably should. But to be honest, I think that they're probably going to be talking past each other because people who are pro-capitalist talk about how capitalism is fair and everything is just consensual transactions between people. Like, oh, you have something, I have this other thing. Let's trade. Let's use money. Everything's consensual. People are agreeing to things of their own free will. It's beautiful. Like that's basically the perspective of pro-capitalist people. So they say that's all capitalism is. But then the like critics of capitalism aren't coming at it from that perspective. They're kind of looking at the downstream effects of the large beast, like which I highly doubt Adam Smith is going to be talking about downstream effects of capitalism. He's just going to be talking about the fact that capitalism is fair. You know? So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really love the fact that you say that if you're going to criticize something, at least understand it first. I'm like, if everyone did that, the world would be a much better place. But yeah, I do, sometimes I get tired of the fact that like these two camps are kind of talking about different things, you know? We need more conversations like that are actually a conversation about particular things. Anyways, well, thanks for, we can wrap it up. It's a lot of fun talking.
Yeah.
My friend.
Gotta have ongoing conversations.
Yeah, man. Hopefully you can release some new music soon, something like that.
I really hope so.
I hope so.
I'm thinking about just using a YouTube type beat instrumental or something and just like singing over or whatever instead of like having like
making everything custom.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea because then you can just practice one part. You can practice the vocalizing and the singing.
Yeah.
And just get really good at that. That's a good idea. All right. Anyways, thanks for chatting.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.